2020 is the first year where, as a former U.S. citizen, I am no longer entitled to vote for the next president of the country, but I did have the ability to vote in 2016 in the historic Hillary versus Trump matchup. In this video, I'm going to explain how my contrarian perspective caused me to vote and why I think that matters to every nomad capitalist. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson, and here at Nomad Capitalist, I've spent more than a dozen years traveling and living overseas to build a network of experts all over the world, build a team of almost 30 people, and help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs legally keep more of their own money and go where they're treated best. Now, today I'm going to talk to you about who I voted for in 2016, my last election that I was eligible to vote in. And the actual reality is I didn't vote. I'm going to tell you who I will vote for in a moment, but as someone who spent a grand total of 0 days in the United States in 2016, I had to work with my local U.S. embassy, where I found it, quite frankly, pretty difficult. For all the talk of how easy it is to register to vote, I had already been registered to vote, and I just ultimately decided that as I had been living in my last residence in the U.S. in a state where it was not going to be contested, I just figured, you know what, I give up. And so that really was a very fitting end to my civic participation in the U.S. And I'm going to tell you a story before I'll tell you who I would have voted for had I actually gotten to do so. You know, growing up as a kid, I was very politically interested and very interested in libertarianism from 14 or 15 years old. Believed in not only personal freedom, but economic freedom. And back then, it wasn't nearly as popular as it is now. And so I was always, against Republicans, against Democrats. That somewhat changed after 9/11. I was 15 or 16 years old, almost 16 years old, almost 17 years old actually in 2001. And I kind of got into the whole patriotism of things, and I decided, all right, let me give the U.S. a chance. I'd never really thought that the U.S. was this amazing country. I'd always been interested in living overseas, even as a teenager. And so I got into that for a couple years, and eventually, you saw more of the mistakes that the U.S. made, and I just never quite felt comfortable. And then eventually I got out of school, and I started a business at 19 and started making money in my early 20s and was paying a lot of taxes and just went back to that, what am I getting for all this money? I'm doing better than most of my friends, and I'm paying all this money, and I'm just not really getting anything for it. And so that's really about the time when I started studying this whole idea of living overseas. But for a while, I had what I think a lot of people have, that I work with at least, is there's that thing where you want to have one foot in the U.S. and one foot overseas. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable place to start, whether it's for a year, a number of years, or even your entire lifetime. I ultimately decided to take the foot out of the U.S. entirely and say, I can handle life overseas because I have been doing so financially, physically, emotionally, and socially in every way for years. And so it was easy for me to cut the cord. But I initially had, this foot where I really wanted to, spend some time in the U.S. I wanted to keep some of the financial infrastructure in the U.S. I wasn't sure how to move my business overseas. And so for years, I did this thing where I traveled increasingly. I started taking note of opportunities around the world. I started meeting people. I started building the network. I started hiring some lawyers. I started understanding how things worked in terms of dispelling the myths of how offshore works, realizing that it's legal to have bank accounts in other countries if you fill out the right forms, realizing that it's legal to move your business. But I was a little bit hesitant because there was no nomad capitalist there to motivate me, tell me it was okay. I had the same problem many of you do before you found us, which is everyone says that just seems kind of weird. Don't do that. Maybe you'll get in trouble. Just stay right here in the country. And so all those years when I was staying in the country, my thought was, I'm a pragmatist. I'm a business owner. Every year I did better than the year before. And I said, let me vote for what's in the best interest of the country. Even if occasionally there's something that doesn't work for me personally, let me do what's in the best interest of those principles of freedom that I've been interested in growing up and that I've always held very dear. And so I would vote for the person that I thought would idealize those, again, even if it wasn't the best thing for me. I think some of the folks who voted for Trump in 2016 in New York and California got a little dose of that when now they have less deductibility of some of their state and local property taxes. And they've actually taken a little bit of a hit in that regard. Maybe they've benefited in other regards, but they said, I think some of those people said, listen, it's the best thing for the country. I have friends who live overseas whose taxes actually went up over Trump because they're overseas, and they lost some of their ability to defer offshore earnings. And they said, Andrew, for us, they're supporting Trump again in 2020. And I said, why? Your taxes went up. And they said, well, we're taking one for the team. So I did that for a number of years. And eventually I realized after 2012, I was watching Obama versus Mitt Romney. And, at this point I look back and I say, I don't have strong feelings about any of these people, quite frankly. To think that people get so intense about Obama's the devil or Mitt Romney is terrible, I just can't do it anymore. I'm sorry. But I remember, very intensely thinking that if people, 2008, Obama got in, the world was collapsing. I remember those days. I was pretty new in business, and it was a scary time being new in business and what's going to happen. And people voted for change, what they thought was change with Obama. Okay, fine. You voted for that in 2008. You were panicking. It was a terrible recession. Lehman Brothers, everyone was going bankrupt. It was falling apart. If that happens again in 2012 in better circumstances, if people don't want to take this, what seems like a relatively pragmatic, I always thought Mitt Romney would be like the benevolent king. That's the kind of guy he would be. Because I kind of think like Mitt Romney shares my kind of feelings where, deep down, does Mitt Romney really care if you have an abortion? He's against it, and he's going to toe the party line, but does he really care? I don't know that he does. Anyway, I thought, all right, 2012, this is my sentinel moment. I remember waking up early. I was sitting in Turkey, in Cappadocia, watching the balloons go up, the hot air balloons at 5 or 6 in the morning as the sun rose. And I had my iPad, and I had the CNN app, and I'm watching as pretty easily and pretty quickly Barack Obama got reelected. I remember back then, a lot more people were on Facebook. I changed my Facebook profile photo to the then city manager of Hong Kong, as a sort of veiled protest that I was going to be moving to Asia. And very soon thereafter I did. I was in the process at that time of selling my final business in the U.S. I had already been spending a lot of my time outside of the U.S. And so that was the final nail in the coffin, not because of the politics, not because, Obama got in, but because I realized that the country is open to this, continuing notion that you didn't build that if you're an entrepreneur, you are a milk cow, and we can come and take from you for the greater good, quote unquote. And I just feel like that is a slippery slope. I believe in supporting people who can't help themselves, and I do a lot of that now with much lower taxes. I do a lot of that voluntarily through various types of charities. But I saw the direction the country was going. And I think in 2016, people felt a reprieve when Trump won. But in 2016, I watched the election results again, this time from South Africa. I stayed up all night and watched the results, and it was a lot more interesting that year when Trump won. And in a sense, I felt good. I felt, yeah, you know what, stick it to these people. Stick it to them and show them that this non-establishment outsider can get in and that people can support that. And I think people saw that as a repudiation of this move towards progressivism, when in reality, I just think people still felt desperate because the fundamentals of the U.S. economy are still there. The fundamentals that jobs are moving overseas because other countries are developing and compete more than they would have 20 or 30 years ago, that's not changing no matter who gets in. Trump said he would change it, but I still think much of the desperation is there. You have all kinds of things, which we're not going to get into. They're not my area of expertise. You've got an opioid epidemic. You've got increasing areas of the country that are just, been stripped bare. And quite frankly, listen, I'm a capitalist. Let the best person, let the best country, let the best opportunity win. I don't hire Americans. I hire people mostly in Eastern Europe. We have a great team. And it's a lot more effective. It's a lot more tax effective. It's a lot more cost effective. It's a lot more pleasant for me. And I've gone where I'm treated best because those are my 5 magic words. So the bottom line is I realize that not only is who is in charge not going to matter, but I realized that I couldn't depend on other people to vote in my interest. And so why was I voting in their interest? I became rather jaded in the end, where I said, I want to help other people. I want the country to grow. I want everyone to be, want us to all, a rising tide lifts all boats. But in 2016, if I was going to vote, I would have voted for Hillary Clinton. I'll tell you why, for one reason. It's not because I love Hillary Clinton. It's not because I hate Donald Trump. Some people surely, I can see some of the Make America Great Again people are already furiously typing on their keyboards, I'm a communist. The channel is called Nomad Capitalist. The business is Nomad Capitalist. But there was one reason. I felt like Trump with America First was really going to go in and shake things up for people like me who lived overseas, and that was going to potentially make my life difficult in a move to get people like me to come back. In a move to, we're going to bring all of our smart people home. There's too many people. They're overseas. They're in countries like Serbia. We're going to bring them back, and we're going to have low taxes. I don't want low taxes. I want to keep paying 0 or 1%. I don't want to live it. If you paid me to live in the United States, I wouldn't live there. So I didn't want to come back because of America First, and I thought that perhaps Trump would rock the boat, and I was right. And as he started to rock the boat, I ultimately decided to divorce myself from the U.S. entirely and to expatriate because I didn't want to see what would happen next. I didn't believe not only in the progressive and the increasingly socialist policies and the fact that people like that and people want to take money from people who work hard. I think if you had a much lower tax rate and you stopped soaking the rich and saying that people who give half their money aren't paying enough, I think more people like me would just take it. But I realized not only that, but I realized there's an entire other class of people that says, you're a jerk for living overseas. And so I felt that Hillary Clinton would have been so status quo on the kind of issues that matter to me as an expat that she would certainly not have gotten rid of citizenship-based taxation, but she wouldn't have upended the entire tax code. She wouldn't have upended the entire regulatory code to make it more difficult, more expensive, more bureaucratic for people overseas. And certainly not all of the scenarios that I thought that could play out under Trump in my list of what could happen, not all those things played out for sure. This is not an anti-Trump video. It's not a pro-Clinton video. I don't like any of them, quite frankly, and I'm glad I don't have to deal with any of them, quite frankly. But I would have voted for her for that sole reason, because instead of caring about what was happening to everybody else, when I realized that as the top 1 or 2% of income earners, I was a target all the time. No one was looking out for me except for the other 1 or 2% and some lobbyists. And so why would I look out for everybody else? Quite frankly, I hate to say it, but that's really what it came down to. And surely somebody in West Virginia who was concerned that Hillary was going to take his guns, that's his issue. But would he care that a guy who decided to live in Malaysia, an American who left the best country on earth, who spit in our face to go and live in Malaysia with some kind of insert racist word here, would he care about me and my ability? That guy would probably cheer that my taxes went up or my tax return got a little bit thicker complying with some new mandates under America First. So I said, you know what? That's how I would have voted. I'm voting for the status quo. Now, I ultimately never cast that vote. And again, I can't say that I'm angry that Trump has gotten in. If nothing else, it's been the push to make me realize, you know what? This isn't the country for you. And for that, I am grateful to Trump and to the movement, because I've now seen both sides and I realize I can't fit in either. This is not trying to guide you towards any decision other than to say that I don't believe that wealthy people have a future in the West, at least a good one. I think things are going to get worse. I think the politics are against you. And I think if you feel the same way I do, you have to realize there are more than two options, and they may not be in the place where you were born. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.